Hello guys and welcome back. It's PugGaming here and I would like to welcome you to a new City Skylines project, The Walking Dead. Now I did release a teaser trailer video earlier in the week which got some excellent feedback, so I'm really excited to start this project. It's going to be one hell of a project for me. There's going to be a lot of new techniques I'm going to have to learn to really excel this. The video you saw, that trailer, took me a good sort of 15 hours worth of building, so it's a big project for me, but it's one that I feel is going to really excel, and it's going to be well worth the time spent. So why The Walking Dead? Well, firstly, I am a huge fan of the series on TV, and secondly, I've really come to love the looks you can actually get out of City Skylines if you're going for a more rundown and abandoned sort of look. There's a lot of new assets being released on the workshop that really help you do that, and I really want to experiment and sort of see how far I can get this to go and see how realistic I can sort of make this look. And basing it on The Walking Dead seems like the best combination of the two. I've got something to base my builds on, and I just love the camera angles and the sort of views and perceptions you can actually get now with the cinematic camera. And sort of linking that back to how great I personally feel the actual camera is on the Walking Dead series. So my plan for this series is releasing a video as best I can for once a week, and this will be released sometime around Sunday, just before the actual episode of Walking Dead airs, for us in Britain anyway. So yeah, we're going to be working on a couple of projects. I've got a few in mind. We're going to certainly start, I think, with Hershel's Farm. So that's going to be the first major project. We've got a lot of other ones that we can work on as well. So any other ideas on what you want me to do, please let me know. But as you saw from the trailer, there's three that I'm definitely going to be working on, and that's Terminus, Alexandra and Hershel's Farm. So out of the three locations, we've got a nice city building location, we've got a nice rural farm location, and we've got a train sort of warehousey yard area. So out of those three projects, they're not going to be the same. They're all going to be completely different in terms of what we're going to be building. So that's why I've chosen those three. We may look at doing the Walking Dead prison, but in terms of the lack of assets on the workshop and buildings, I'm not too sure how realistic we can get that, but we can certainly do our own version of that. But for now, let's concentrate on these three projects, starting with Hershel's Farm. But before we jump into these three projects, I had a lot of requests on how I designed and how I built the Atlanta City skyline. So this is going to be the first episode, and we're going to go through the time lapse of how I created this and how I managed to achieve the skyline and sort of get the Walking Dead feel. So that's the first part, and let's get into this time lapse now. It's been running in the background for a little while, so let's catch up with what I've done so far. So the difficult part of such a big build and creating a skyline as best as you possibly can to the real thing is you're not always going to find the right assets and buildings on the workshop that are the right height, the right size, etc. So you have to use a bit of your imagination here. So you'll probably see a few clips of me actually putting buildings either into the ground in terms of building, well, terraforming down some holes to get the right height and angles, and you'll also see me using the move it tool to raise a few of these buildings up. So you may see this as a cheating way of doing so, but this is purely a build for the skyline. So I'm not too fussed about what the buildings look like around the actual skyline itself. I'm more interested in the view we are looking at here at the moment from the road's end upwards, just like the Walking Dead front cover was, which is obviously what I'm basing this build on. So none of it's going to be working or functional. There's going to be no cars going across, which obviously makes sense for the build I'm actually doing. So that's kind of why I've been doing that, because it is extremely difficult to do so. And you'll probably see at the very start of the video, I actually plopped down a road and just put down as many of the buildings that I thought would suit the skyline as I could. There are a few on the workshop that are actually like for likes as what I put in the actual Skyline, but a lot of them I've had to mix and match and try and get the best look I possibly could. But that is certainly something I would suggest for people. If you're doing a build, sometimes it's difficult to, well, sometimes I forget in fact how many props I've actually downloaded off the workshop ready for a build. So one good thing to do is, like I say, just draw one long road somewhere, plot down all the buildings you want to use, and the good thing now is if you're using the Move It mod tool, you can pretty much just click on those items and copy them over rather than having to go through the whole list again. So one thing I like to do is plan my projects, and that's one way I do so, getting all the props down that I want to use, or I'm interested in using, and then I can sort of pick and choose at which ones I want to use, and it just makes life a lot easier and makes you, well, get your building done a lot quicker. And you may also note as well, as I kept putting on the cinematic camera view, but what I'm doing here is because there's a certain view that I want to have the screenshot taken with, and that's my reference point for copying the actual design, well sorry, the actual Skyline itself. I kept going back to that and just doing a quick record just so I can see what it looks like from that angle, and I can then work out what building needs to move where and where I need to place the next one. Also help for sort of arranging the height, etc. So having a reference point somewhere is definitely key to getting a perfect Skyline, especially when you're copying something. But yeah, make sure you always go to that same location, and I found the best way of doing that is with the cinematic camera, as you saw just then. We're pretty much just saving it. We're doing like 10 seconds either side of a standard point 1 and point 0 both being in the same location, and like I say, just a very easy way to reference things. So a little pug tip for you there, guys. So you'll also see as well, I've took full advantage again of the Move It mod tool. A lot of these buildings didn't quite look right in terms of what was on the workshop and what I was trying to replicate, so I did actually combine a few together just to create a more realistic looking building. You can see those two buildings there in the middle. They have a thin building in the middle, and then a larger one on the outside to sort of create that look that I'm trying to copy, which was difficult at first. There was a few times where I kept going back and forth to the workshop praying that there was a better solution for it, but after trying to merging two buildings together, it did in the end work out quite nicely, and it does really look like the Skyline that I'm trying to replicate here. So even now, very early on in the build, you can already see the Skyline taking place. Obviously the detailing is going to be right at the very end of this episode, and it was a great build up, to be honest, to finally get the actual Skyline looking exactly how it looks in the actual image I was sort of imitating, to then get on to detailing it in your own little way. It was a great way of it was a great build, to be honest. It's a really fun build to do, and that's another reason why I want to carry on and do this Walking Dead series. So we haven't actually touched upon which map we are going to be using for this new series. So we actually are going to use the Atlanta map created by Sim Shady off the workshop, and in terms of what I want out of a map, I am not too fast at the moment, to be honest, with this one. The fact that this is already built to scale is perfect, because what my plan is each location that I do, I will place that on the map to the nearest point possible as to where it is in real life. So for example, Terminus is the southwest of Atlanta, so we'll be trying to place that as close as possible to that location, which just makes the whole build a little bit more exciting. And I know I'm not going to fill out the whole map with these projects, but it's nice to have these little zones of areas we're building on, and it could expand in the future. We could even look to design our own sort of areas with the whole Walking Dead theme in place, just like I did with the recent introduction video teaser that I sent out. And I think we'll just go with the flow of this project and see where it takes us. So as you can see now, the Skyline is pretty much complete. It's in place. Pretty much all the buildings match up, and it's now time to do a bit of terraforming around the area. and not forgetting the detailing that needs to be done. So there's 2 banks we need to raise up, one where this factory is in this corner, and on the right hand side there's a big sort of foresty area. So both sides need to be terraformed up to sort of match the skyline, and obviously the trees cover sort of certain aspects of the skyline that we can currently see. So those gaps in both corners, left and right, are what's going to be covered. And it did take me a bit of time to get this road looking as good as it can be. Obviously it's a little bit more difficult when you're trying to create something that doesn't actually exist, so this was the best we could possibly get. And as I say, moving on now, it took a little while to get the right height of the terrains in these corners here, because bearing in mind the trees on top as well were going to change that height as well, because it depends on what size trees we go for. But it was a good start, and it certainly helped aid the right direction. So next we put in a few fences around the train track area. I was hoping to do some sort of a demolished, sort of broken train fenced area, but sort of time came upon us too quickly and we just went for a standard fence around it. But now we can start filling in the banks with the trees. So we had a selection of trees that seemed to suit the theme of what there actually is in real life. So we start plopping down some trees now, just to cover that area. So you'll see me keep going back to the cinematic camera to make sure we're filling in the right gaps and not putting too many trees in. And you'll now slowly begin to see this take shape. This was certainly one of the most enjoyable parts of the build, getting to see everything sort of come together. The skyline finally gets closed off in terms of the angle we're looking at here, because the trees now are covering that corner, and just there, that angle there was perfect. All the trees in the right place, and now it's down to detailing the actual grassy areas around the sides, etc. So a combination of using the terrains, different terrains, using some of the decors mods and some extra sort of tree and foliage areas certainly did bring this area to life. And using a lot of the most recently added, which I must say have been very good and very handy, are the rubbish props. There's another one as well where there's some litter ones, and also some which are like old beds, etc. And they, even from a distance, look great. As you can see, I placed quite a lot of them by this factory, and I know you can't quite tell what they are unless you zoom right in, but in my opinion that looks great. I love that sort of feel to it. It looks like it's a sort of abandoned area, and it's definitely going to be featured in my builds a lot. Now the difficult part of this build was I didn't want to make the area look too abandoned. Obviously this is post sort of zombie period, so in terms of what's been happening, it's not been sort of decades since this has happened, it's obviously only recent, so the land won't be that badly sort of decomposed and messy, but I wanted to give that influence and that sort of feeling that yes, this is derelict now, no one really comes here, it's not a lived in area, so there will be a bit of rubbish around. And obviously now we're going to be moving on to the huge mass of cars, which I must say took a long time to get down. But to say, copying the Walking Dead image, there are all these cars heading out of Atlanta, which is obviously where in the series the zombie outbreak begins. And all these vehicles have been dumped here and left, and either they've been eaten, killed, turned into zombies, or just left the cars there and legged it. So I wanted to give that sort of feeling here of all these cars around, and I must say this took me a while, and that was even when I used the Move It mod to copy and paste a section. So you can imagine how much time it would have taken me if the Move It mod wasn't about. I'm sure we'll be talking a good solid couple of hours to do so. So that did save a lot of time, and it also helped repetition and making things look a lot more appealing. Now the difficult thing that kept going on in my head at this early stage was how much detail do we put in, and am I going over the top with some of the sort of placements of foliage and decor, etc. The look I got, to me personally, was great. I liked it. It was just a case of, am I doing too much in too small an area? And that's obviously going to be something that's going to be in my head when we start building the actual main project. So I want it to be simple but effective. I don't want to be doing too many decors, etc. There's been a few builds I've done where I have gone a little bit overkill on the number and a lot of overlapping, which then once you do a time lapse or any cinematic view, you can see the two sort of flashing because they're on top of one another. And obviously I don't want to have that going on in this new project. So something for me to keep my eye out for. I'm thinking the map choice with the terrains is going to help a great deal. Obviously a lot different to the British Challenge that I have been building recently, so that's going to really make things interesting for me as well. So we'll see how that goes, but very confident in my map selection and terrains, etc. So I'm sure we will be fine. So the last few stages of this build was to sort of mess up the roads a bit, so put down some of the decors and start working on the final part, which I left right till the end for a very special and particular reason, which we'll be coming to very shortly. But first, just wanted to mess this area up as well, make it look a little bit more used, putting down some of the decors here. And the plan was to have a bit of sort of, you know, grassy area as well, a few dirty patches, just something to make it look a little bit more sort of rugged and used. You may also have seen I added my own little Rick on a horse as well, which is just like the image itself, and I thought I'd just do that as a little bit of a joke. But anyway, last few bits of bush and foliage go down, and we can then move on to the reason why I left the train area as my very last part and piece of the puzzle, so to speak. So, looking at the image I have in front of me, which is the image I'm copying of The Walking Dead, there is a train on the right hand side with carriages, and it's pretty much derailed. So what my intentions were was to create, or find someone to create me, a train in that sort of fashion. So I went onto the workshop, and there's a few amazing asset builders for trains, but the one that took my eye was Bespiegelhausen. I think that's pronounced right. If not, I apologise sincerely. I have put a link in my description for his workshop, but he is an outstanding builder of train assets. He really does excel when he builds them, and I had a friendly conversation with him, and he agreed to make me a one-off special derailed train and carriage. And this is what you're seeing now. Amazing work from this guy. It took him a couple of days, if that, and the quality of his builds was amazing. So a huge thank you for yourself, sir, for helping out on the new Walking Dead challenge. Everyone, if you need any trains, by all means get back in touch with this guy. He's incredible. So moving back over to the project, as you can see, we created a sort of derailed look of some trains and carriages. A few we've had sort of crashed into the side of the edge of the forest there. So it was just a good way here to replicate what we're trying to create here, and a few trees and sort of bushes went down as well, and some of the litter to sort of create the fact that this has crashed and there's debris around, etc. So all in all, that worked out extremely well, and the build itself is pretty much complete from here onwards. So I'm going to leave you with a few cinematics of what we have built today. So this is the Atlanta Skyline, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As I say, episode 2 will be commencing next week, and we'll be starting with Hershel's Farm. As always guys, thank you very much indeed for watching and support. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and even better, give me a subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Other than that guys, thank you for watching, and all the best.